Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Salam Media. I'm Ruwa Shah. The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted the entire world with lockdown in most parts of the world. People adapted to new work situations, work from home. Students were not able to join schools. But how is online education really going on, and if it's a viable option for the future of education? We'll be talking about this in tonight's episode, and for that we have a very special guest with us tonight, Dr. Marcia Linus Lofia, if we can have her. Good evening and welcome, Dr. Marcia.
Hello, good evening to you.
Would you please introduce yourself and tell the audience who you are?
Thanks. I'm Dr. Marcia Lina Cleophas, and I am a practicing psychologist, but currently working at the University of Stellenbosch as the head of the disability unit. And I've been there for about 13 years now. My background is in specialized education as well as high school teaching. So I'm very much involved in education.
Right. Dr. Marcia, thank you. It's a pleasure for having you. And would you tell us, how do you find online education as an option for future, in the education sector?
Yeah, it's been quite an interesting journey for us in the past few months, as you can imagine. We've before pre-COVID, we've had something called blended learning. Which some of the universities, especially, which is the context I come from, have been doing quite a lot of, where they combine videos and they combine audio and they combine, giving students articles and so on. So we've had a little bit of that, although not obviously prolifically used. So
Right.
that's been case, but of course now we've had to move our coursework and even our counseling into online spaces. And if one looks at the digitalized world that we're in, the fourth industrial revolution, I think it's inevitable that we are going to be sort of moving in that direction, in some way. Maybe hybridized, maybe not fully online, but I think it's some reality that we need to get used to.
Right. Dr. Marcia, you said you are an educational psychologist. Would you please elaborate about what does it mean to be an educational psychologist?
Well, essentially, and in South Africa, educational psychologists work quite a bit with developmental issues. Many of them are found in your education sector, so that could be at university, it could be in schooling, high school. Some of them are in private practice, and some are also sort of in the education management district areas. So we basically work with students where there's the interface between education and as well as their learning, if there are developmental issues, if there are career related issues, if there are psychological issues that are manifesting negatively, especially in the school environment. That's the sort of area that we work with our students. And of course, when there are students with disabilities as well.
Right. You have written recently about education for students having varying abilities. How are they going, such students going to cope with this new method within the present structure of education in South Africa, particularly?
Yeah, that's very interesting. Our experience in the past few weeks has been that some students have actually enjoyed the online environment, and those would be, for example, students that have social anxiety, where they can't get used to the big classes like in a university context, so for them this is heaven because they can work behind a screen and still get some kind of exposure. So for some it's been quite easy. For others it's been a lot more challenging. Some students have actually deregistered from some of their subjects, from the courses, they're now going to extend their degrees. So for some, it's really been challenging because they, again, on the other hand, prefer that human interaction, And then also, I think the way that some of the work has now been sent to the students, sometimes the lecturers only send PowerPoints or they only send an audio of the work, So if a student is they're going to struggle with only the audio. If they only send a PowerPoint, sometimes the students got to, some students can figure it out and others find that difficult. So that those are some of the challenges, that students with disabilities have, those with learning disabilities also, they need lots of repetition and more and more and more. So if they're only getting one medium of information, it is particularly challenging for them.
Right. You also have been suggesting to the government, sort of, that more needs to be done regarding the assistive technologies and, designing accessible courses for students who have abilities, very varying abilities. What should be done by the government, according to you?
Look, currently in South Africa, we do have the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, or NSFAS, as is commonly known, and they do support students with disabilities more and more. So they're getting into supporting them with assistive technologies and so on. So that's expanding quite a bit now, and especially now in this time of COVID, all students are getting laptops. So there's a big drive for this to be taking place. Because they realize that that this is what needs to happen. So I think there's a big realization that that government needs to help and assist students a lot more than what they are. And then I think universities are also looking at how they can support students, that maybe are not on funding, but they cannot just buy a laptop, for example, or just buy the software. So they're also looking at how they can fund. But I think more and more as we go forward, there's going to have to be a lot more also partnerships between your companies like your Mnets and your Cell Cs and so on, to also assist with data. So there's a lot of that. It's already been happening where they also are looking at assisting government education departments, universities, to ensure that students have data and devices, and then of course assistive technologies, which are a lot more specialized. That's not so easily funded, although we do have some of the big banks, for example, in South Africa. FNB is doing a lot of funding for assistive technologies. So here and there are pockets of funding that's coming through, but yeah, we need much more.
Right. On that, you said students are getting laptops and technology is being distributed sort of among the students. But there is a class in South Africa also where students are not resourceful enough and are not accessible, to the digital world entirely. What about those students? Lesser privileged students, let's put it correctly.
Yes, I think that is where, much more needs to be done. I mean, I'm speaking from a higher education context, and I mean, I know that there's quite a bit that's been done there. So I think also for your private companies, to come in and to assist, at such universities, with funding to enable more students to get access, to very basic. I mean, a laptop is actually a basic for every student. So we are aware of universities where there are students that still do not have laptops, but we really that is where more can definitely be done, and also through NSFAS, that they aid more.
Tell us about that aid. How does it work, this NSFAS you're talking about?
Yeah, so NSFAS, the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, there are two sort of groups. So the one is when there are students with disabilities that apply for funding, they look
Mhm.
at family income of about 600,000 rand. So if the family income is 600,000 rand and below, then NSFAS will fund a student like that. So they will fund your tuition, your accommodation, your food, your books, assistive technologies that you might need up to the value of 50,000. They would also assist you with transport. So it's quite a good funding that goes to students with disabilities, up to 600,000. Other families would be 350,000. So non-disabled students, they can also get funding if that is the family income, to a max of 350,000. And again, it would be those basics like, accommodation, tuition, books, food, and then some transport monies and so on. So this is actually open to any South African student,
Mhm.
um, and they just need to apply. They do apply online. It's an online application at
Hello, Dr. Masha, can you hear me? I think we have a technical issue. Can you hear me, Dr. Masha?
I can.
Yes, please continue. You were saying.
Yeah, so NSFAS then does do that kind of support, which they can give to those two categories of students: 350,000 annual income, and then the 600,000 for students with disabilities specifically. And that's open to any student in South Africa, and at a tertiary institution. So I'm only
Mhm.
speaking about higher education now. I'm not
Right.
speaking about schools or that. Yeah.
Right. Coming back to your article that you wrote recently, you talk about the varying technological abilities and resources. What are those resources that you're mentioning?
So if one looks at students with disabilities specifically,
Mhm.
often, for example, let's take a blind student, for the blind student to be able to read um, the PowerPoint or any articles, any information or emails or even
Right.
the phone. They felt their cell phone. They, because they cannot see it, they then use specialized software that actually reads. So they call it screen reading software. And so we have, for example, Zoom and Zoom Text. Sorry, not Zoom. Zoom Text and
Mhm.
JAWS. The two sort of typical examples of screen reading software that would then read everything that comes on the screen for that student. So that's one example. Yeah, deaf students really do benefit by any kind of video material or audio material that is also captioned, so that you know that you've got the running text at the bottom. That really assists the students. So whether that's lecture notes or the lecture itself or any videos, it needs to be captioned too. So just some of the assistive technologies, that students sort of typically can use in the education environment.
Right. What are those options available to institutions about education amid this pandemic? This pandemic seems to be unending as of now. What can institutions, in their own capacities and with the help of respective governments, do to make this method of education easier and available to sections across the society?
I think, one could look at from low tech to high tech. So if one wants to look at the most accessible, if one thinks of emails, and even your cell phone, your smartphone, SMS even, that
Right.
those are of the most accessible tools for most people, and that universities can use. So universities can communicate with their students via SMS, and or do duplications of SMS and on email, so that you have two or three different channels of communication. Of course, your websites, I mean, that's also another way, but I think it's important that one has more than one mode of communicating, and that you always think, what's the sort of the easiest, if I can put it, or the simplest way, or the most basic way. And if you do that and put that in place, then you should, be able to. Of course, I mean, there's also been postal services, where there are really outlying areas where there are sometimes broadband and internet connectivity. So, going and using those services, courier services, to also reach students. And certainly some of the universities, do that. But I think, those are just options also to explore. So going back to basics really as well.
Right. So we are kind of seeing a shift from the conventional and the traditional method of teaching face to face to now through screens, through the technology. How will it impact the psychology of a student? I mean, for example, me, I would like to go to campus and have a class in my campus with my professors, ideally. But that situation doesn't seem to be ideal now. And how is it going to have a psychological effect?
Yeah, like I said, some students find it very difficult. Some have become very anxious. There are students already have anxiety, anxiety disorders, depression. So for them, it's been really challenging, and we find that some of them, like I said, have deregistered. They've just cut out some of these subjects and said, "Well, I'm only going to focus on this one subject, because this is all I can deal with." So I mean, psychologically, it's been very tough for some students. Some students on the autism spectrum, for example, that like structure, suddenly that structure's just gone and they've got to create it for themselves. So that's had quite a deep impact on them. And sometimes, if parents could assist them at home to put in that structure, that was good. But when that couldn't happen, the student just couldn't cope. They just, well, I wouldn't say drop it. So we would usually have a conversation with them and say, well, can you maybe just leave 2 or 3 subjects and let's just focus on the one, so that they don't feel like these dropouts and, and then just sort of didn't work. So when a student is completely debilitated and cannot function, of course, we can't push for a student to even do one subject. Then, I mean, we've had students, for example, that had to be hospitalized during this time because they couldn't cope with it. So it's really as varied and different and diverse as we are, and in terms of our resilience and how we cope, so has been the responses of people. Some have just taken to this like a fish in water, and others have really, really struggled. And it was also to be expected, because we are not all the same.
Right. Do you think it's a global phenomena that you obviously expertise is in South Africa, but recently the United States administration asked students to go back home, or will not issue visas to the students who have acquired admission in the universities in the states. So it doesn't feel like education anymore. Like I said, going to the campus doesn't. Do you think it's a global phenomena and anybody can study from anywhere now?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, it works for some and it won't work for some others. So I really think that I don't foresee that this is going to be the way that we're going to go completely. As you know, in South Africa, we do have universities that are online. Our biggest university, UNISA, is an online university, distance education. So that's the norm, but that is what people choose. But there are people that choose and prefer to really have that contact and be on campus. So I don't foresee that we're going to be go on like this 100%. But yeah, I think they will certainly. I think what would be good is if there would at least be options, as we open up and as it's safe to do so, that there would be options to that. But I must also say that there's a lot of flexibility in the system now, so lecturers understand that people are struggling. So, they, for example, having exams where students have another opportunity, like a fourth opportunity in January. To do exams, for example. So there's a lot of flexibility now to accommodate for this, but I mean, we don't foresee that we're going to 100% go online.
Help me understand this. Does a student in any way take online education for granted? Somewhat, it's lenient. There's a pandemic. Teachers will just pass us through the examinations. We won't need to do a lot of work. Does it impact the quality of education?
Well, it shouldn't, but again, that flexibility and leniency, I think, is also up to a point. So I think some universities are still very intent on maintaining, this the standard, of education. So again, you can be flexible up to a point, but not to the point that the standard gets dropped. And so I don't think that would be a good thing at all. So, rather extend a course or, to stop the course, but to sort of degrade and diminish it, I don't think that's the plan, at all. And I don't think that's a good thing either. I don't think it's good for anybody.
And as having a background in the psychology, what would be your advice to students to help them cope with the current phenomena?
I think, this is a good chance for students also to learn that skill of, flexibility, that sometimes you cannot be in control of the situation, that you need to do what you can do, take it in small bites. Don't sort of try and deal with everything at the same time, and just do what's manageable, breathe, inhale, do exercise, just get out, get some vitamin D, get sun, learn new skills, it's a perfect time to brush up on the skills, do some knitting and crochet and learn another language and so on. So I think that, ways of coping and just, I think, being with family and staying safe, it's a very uncertain time. And when we have uncertainty, it makes people very anxious. So I think we've got to work with what we know, what we have, what is in our sort of within our means, and then, let go of what you cannot control, and just breathe, exhale that.
Right. I'm definitely going to take your knitting advice very seriously because I think I need it. And, before we let you go, one last question. I know your expertise is in higher education, but what about primary education? Little kids, a 4-year, 5-year-old kid who will not obviously have the same education at home within his, home. How are parents going to deal with that, and what should be the measures that the administration should take for their betterment?
Yeah, well, I mean, now we've just heard that the little ones are actually also able to go back back to school. But I think again, I think everyone is also so gripped with fear. Parents are fearful and students. But I think that just to really take it one day at a time and to also project, some confidence. You have to be safe. You have to take those basic measures, but also just to have a little bit of fun and loosen up also, without, of course, going overboard. So, and then I think also just to use the home, what is it in your home that what are the skills right at home that you can actually use? So if you are teaching colors or if it's numbers, how do you use your basic, whether you're cooking or, the potatoes and the onions and the so there are lots of things that you can actually incorporate in the home into your basic numeracy and literacy skills, for students. And I think also just to stay in touch with the teachers, whether that's WhatsApp, SMS, also be guided by them. I think what's also great is if the little ones can check in with their teacher, they also miss their teachers, So like a video call, like this, and just saying hi to teacher and having a chat, I think those are also important things because we are human and we are social beings mainly. So I think that's important.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely could not acquaint myself with this new system, and I did miss my classes, and I do miss my teachers, and talking to them face to face definitely has a different impact. And learning by listening and gestures and everything, it's altogether a different experience, especially for someone like me who's not very smart to cope up with the digital system. So, but it was a great talk with you, Dr. Marcia. Thank you so much. We had lovely insights from you. We hope to hear from you soon and join us again very soon. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks so much, Ruwa. Good night.
Thank you. Good
Bye.
night. Now we will. This was Dr. Marcia, and she had some lovely insights from her expertise in what is the psychological impact of online education, and how does it work in the South African educational system. Before we continue, we'll take a break, and we'll be back shortly. Please watch and share our video on the social media pages of Salam Media, and keep listening. Thank you.
Global pandemic, and we need your help to flatten the curve. Islamic Relief is reaching out to the most vulnerable of our community in South Africa, Yemen, and Gaza. 400 Rand can provide a family with a food pack in South Africa, and 500 Rand a hygiene pack in Syria, Yemen, and Gaza. With your help, we can save lives across the world. Donate now. Go to www.islamic-relief.org.za.
Osman's Taj Mahal Spice and Rice. For over 80 years, Osman's Taj Mahal have been perfecting the art of the perfect blend of spices, pure, aromatic, and well-seasoned. Spices to tantalize your taste buds. From creative cuisines to gastronomical gourmet goodies, from exotic odors to traditional dishes, Osman's Taj Mahal have remained synonymous with quality spices and condiments. Taj Mahal rice, beans, and lentils. Try our range of chili bite mixes, rose and ilachi syrup, our quick and easy biryani pack, and our traditional range of spice blends. Osman's Taj Mahal. There is no substitute for quality.
Dad, well, I've been chatting with an investment broker today and...
Broker? Did the broker tell you that our economy is a mess? There's bushfires in Australia, America wanted World War III, and now the coronavirus is traveling around the world.
Well, I also thought about purchasing some crypto.
Crypto? What's that, like another pyramid scheme? I don't trust what I can't see.
There's an apartment in Belito.
So all your family will be asking to stay there for free. And what if the government takes it away, eh?
Dad, I don't think it works like that.
I'll tell you what works. Gold. At your age, I invested in gold coins and it paid for your university fees and your wedding. No contracts, no agreements. Your investment is in your hands and you own it.
With a 70% growth in only 5 years, do you still doubt gold investment? Contact RJ Coin today, 031 202 4701, or visit them at 151 Stephen Lamini Road in Musgrave, Durban. Randery Jewelers Gold Coin Exchange, your passport to gold investment. Don't be sheepish. Kurbani with Penny Appeal is easy peasy. For just 700 Rand in India and Uganda, or 1,800 Rand right here at home in South Africa. Other options available. You can reap the rewards of your sacrifice. Go on and do your bit to banish poverty. Only the best animals, 100% reliable and guaranteed notice of your Kurbani done. Call 031 1100 573 or visit www.pennyappeal.org.za. Penny Appeal. Small change, big difference.
Hello, good evening, and welcome back. You're listening to Salam Media, and I'm Ruwa Shah. Tonight, we're talking about if online education is a feasible option. We had Dr. Marcia with us before. Now, we are joined from Turkey by Dr. Assistant Professor Dr. Ahmed Oztekin. Thank you so much, Dr. Ahmed, for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you. Have a good broadcasting.
Thank you. Like other parts of the world, Turkey imposed a strict lockdown in March, which continued for about 3 months. Now, as the lockdown has been lifted, educational institutes are yet to open and function normally. Students here have appeared in examinations online, and this method, how did it work for Turkey? And we'll be talking about this in detail with Dr. Ahmed. Sir, you have been conducting online classes since the lockdown was imposed in Turkey. How do you feel as a teacher? Is it a do you have a satisfaction that you taught so many students for so many months online?
First, we can say that this is a multi-dimensional problem. It's a technical side, motivation side, psychological side, teacher side, and the student side. So multi-dimensional, and we can take it one by one.
Right.
We can say this is not enough to understood what students wait from teachers. So in classroom, in conventional education, we can take the reacts from the students and instantly. It's an important keyword, in my opinion, instantly, because when we are talking about the distance education, the distance education means that teacher is a small image in the right top of the laptop monitor, and it's only image. But in the classroom, we can talk about too many things, and we can react quickly from the students. Students want to know it. Students want to listening about it, or students are boring about this subject, for example. And when I take the reactions from the students, I can change the topic. Maybe sometimes I can tell a story about the topic. Maybe sometimes giving a little subjects, little readings for the PDF documents, for example, or photocopies about the articles about the subject, we can give them. But in the distance education, in the online education, we can take the reactions from the students. And students, again, I said that, students think that teachers are small images on the top right of the laptops.
Right. Dr. Ahmed, you have been teaching for a long time now, and you have had experiences with students, like you said, reactions of students, which you can instantly catch and understand. What has been the response of students while you conducted online classes? Have the students in any way taken the classes for granted, muted their microphones, put off their cameras, and not listened to anything you were saying?
At first, students think that is a temporary situation. So it will going to fixed, changed, and we are going to learn our conventional education. So they don't care about it. After a moment, they understood that this situation is not temporary, as they think about. So they have to study to work about on the topics, on the examinations, on the lessons. But most of the students are not able to internet connection, some devices, for example, so they can not join our lessons.
Right. So, like you said, this has this been difficult for you as a teacher from the traditional methods of speaking to students face to face, as you mentioned, and now through screens? How difficult as a method has it been for a teacher, professor like you?
It's really a problem because I'm a educator in communication faculty. The body language is important. At the same time, now here we are speaking after behind of the monitors. I can't use my body language, so it's a really problem for me because the persuasion is important. And the body language supports that. After, yes.
So I was going to ask, what do you think of online education as a subject? Do you think it holds any space in the future of education? Because now we are seeing even the United States has asked the students to go back home and will not issue visas to students who had acquired admissions in various universities across the states. They are asking everybody to stay home and learn from their homes. So is this the future of education? Are people going to study from home?
I don't think so. At this situation, most people working from home, at home. And how is that efficient? So it's really, really hard because the situation of students, the position of today's students are not want to look at a monitor screens. So I want to say that the future of education is not online. Maybe it's a commercial use, but in real, we need classrooms. We need physical spaces because of touch books, touch to the blackboard, touch to the notebooks, and touch to the pencils.
Right.
Education is mean that. So online education only, I think that a commercial activity event.
But it was quite necessary given what we have been going through. Even Turkey with that lockdown, I think the administration took this step to shut down all the educational institutes, which helped in a a larger way to control or contain the coronavirus situation. So it was, I think, necessary at that time. But students in Turkey have appeared in examinations. There were university entrance examinations recently, and students appeared in physically in the examination halls. And if I'm not wrong, there was a lockdown outside. It was banned to walk on the streets on those days, so that students could roam without go to those examination halls without any stress, and parents would be stress free too. So sir, what is this situation in Turkey? Please tell, because we were speaking to someone from South Africa before, and now we have you from Turkey. Is it different in your country, or is it same as it is in other countries?
In Turkey, we can say that the last of the March, the schools are closed, and distance learning start. Our students have examination lessons online, but examinations are take first of all homeworks. They do the homeworks for their examinations. After the final examination, after the homeworks, we make a final examinations. They all online.
So all the examinations were conducted online for higher education, for university.
Yes. And 10% of our students, my students, I can say, cannot access to the internet and maybe not computer. So
I was going to ask that to you, Dr. Ahmed. Your university, RGS University, has about over 60,000 students enrolled as of now. And do you think, or do you believe that all those students have access to internet, or have enough resources to have a laptop, internet, and work from home, study from home?
Work from home and study from home, we can say this again the multidimensional problem, because it is not enough to having a computer or having an internet connection. It's about its fastening. How fast is it? When you are making watching a TV video, or for listening something like music or lessons, when connections ability is slow, you can understand what is it. Or when your computer is slow, old technology, you can't understand what is it. So this is not only about having a technology. This is about how the technology is near.
Right. As you said yourself, you are in the communication faculty in RGS University, but I mean, you belong to the social sciences faculty at large. Social sciences student can manage to study from home. I am a social science student, and your homeworks were mostly about reading books and to write articles, so I know. But what about science students? They go and they conduct experiments and tests in labs for practical purposes. They have to go to school. Doctors, for example, how is it going to affect them?
This interesting question, because we are in communication faculty, and we are a social science, a part of social science, but we have studios. Our some of students are in journalism working, and our students some radio, television, and cinema. They are making some broadcasts. They are
working in film.
Yes. So it means that it's not only social science. It's about the practice science.
Right.
So in this situation, we can say that the practical lessons are harder than in this situation, harder than the other conventional lessons, theoric lessons, like mechanicals, architectural, doctors,
right,
engineers.
So it's quite difficult for them to cope up with this system. Sir, as far as I know, you're also a father and you have children. How has it been for children, younger children, not higher education students? how has this impacted their psychology?
Yes, you told that. I'm a father. I have one daughter and one son. My son, who names Emre, he is 11 years old. He is go to the primary school. He is keeps his lessons from TV, the distance education. Yeah. And sometimes some in computer programs like Zoom, the teacher makes his lessons in the Zoom program, but I see that he has no motivation for listening to the teacher. And when I told about the body language and the space has a language, when we become into the classroom, the space classroom told us this is a classroom, students are sits here, teachers come to the classroom and sits here, tell important things to the students, and students should listen to the teacher. So that's all things are taught from the classrooms, spaces language. But in this situation, my son take the laptop on his lap and only watch what his best friend make on the screen, what he's going to make a comic things like la 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 la. So it's not really efficient in my opinion.
Right. So
that I told it may be commercial.
Right. You mentioned about lessons for students from the primary education sector, that Turkish government took measures, steps for them to study through TV, through Zoom. And I believe Turkey to some extent did something, as compared to other parts of the world where there was completely no access for students to any sort of education. So what were other measures except for those lessons, and when are schools going to open, if at all?
This I can't answer the question because this is about the medical schools, specials. So they said the virus, the pandemic is over, and we can go to the schools.
But I think they have a date of August 15. As of now, the government has said.
Turkey, yes. In Turkey, the August 15 are the commercial schools are open, but the community schools at I think the beginning of the August.
September.
September, yes, September. The beginning of the September will open. This is only planning.
We don't know if it will happen.
Yes, because the new data are coming from the hospitals, pandemic hospitals. The percentage of people who is have
infected of the disease.
Yes, and this will be a change.
It's going up again. We have been monitoring the data, and since the lockdown has been lifted, the number of cases are going up again.
Diseases, and this is up to us if we take our personal
hygiene and
yes. So it's maybe more good things will be.
Right. It's all about how we behave and how we keep away from this virus. That's right, sir. Before we let you go, sir, so you think that it is not, since the topic is online education, it's not a viable option for the future. Please give us a comment, your last comment about this, that if this is not entirely the future, or there will be some part of the world who will continue learning through internet.
The whole world is not preparing to this situation for educational. In the future, we can say that this is a part of education, but only in the natural disasters
Right.
like this. This is only a little bit part of education. So
So you
when
strongly believe that it's not permanent,
yes, yes, in my opinion,
right?
because it's
Well,
not efficient, I think.
I really hope that it is not, because I miss my school, I miss teachers, and as I said to the previous guest also, it's a different feeling altogether to be in a classroom. It's a different experience to talk to teachers face to face, and I think quality of education does affect through distance
Absolutely,
education.
absolutely, yes. I thought that the students' reactions tell us what they want from the teachers. In screens, we can take the reactions truly.
Right. But it was a great discussion, Dr. Ahmed. Thank you so much for joining me. And I hope that we get back to our schools and we get back to see each other soon. Thank you so much for
Yes.
joining us.
Thank you so much again. Good night. Good. Have a good evening for you in Turkey. We are in
Yes.
at night. Okay. Have a good broadcasting.
Thank you, sir. Well, that was all about tonight's episode, and thank you all for joining us. You can share, watch our videos on the social media pages of Salam Media. I will be back next Tuesday with another topic. Till then, take care and have a good night. Assalamu alaikum.